The forest echoed with the rhythmic thud of Jack Harlan's axe, its blade biting into old bark with mechanical precision. Each swing came like a heartbeat, slow and measured, until something changed. A hollow thump reverberated through the woods, off-pitch, deeper, unnatural. Jack paused, breath held, the silence that followed louder than the strike itself. The tree before him stood taller than most, bark gnarled and blackened with age. It wasn't on the schedule for cutting. In fact, he didn't remember seeing it yesterday. Yet here it stood, dead center in his path, demanding attention. Jack stepped closer, pressing a calloused hand against its surface. Cold, much colder than the summer air. He ran his fingers along a deep vertical split in the trunk, far too uniform to be natural. Peering inside, he found an impossibly dark void, as though the tree's center had been scooped out by something that feared the light. He leaned closer. A whisper, or wind. He pulled back sharply, eyes scanning the empty woods. No movement. Just the ever-present hush of pine needles and distant bird calls, or the absence of them. Before we dive deeper into what Jack found inside that tree, make sure to subscribe for more gripping stories like this one. You won't want to miss where this path leads. Back at the camp, Jack didn't mention the tree. The other loggers were finishing their shift, laughter and the clatter of tools filling the clearing. Benny Rhodes, the youngest of them all, jogged over with his usual grin. "Hey, Jack, you see that weird clearing near Sector 9? Whole patch looks like it's been burned or something." Jack shrugged. "Trees rot. Lightning hits." "Yeah, but this one didn't look natural. No ash, just black." Jack tightened the strap on his axe, his expression unreadable. "Leave it be. We cut what's marked." Benny frowned but didn't push. Everyone knew not to argue with Jack once he shut down. Later that evening, Jack sat alone on the porch of his cabin, a tin mug of coffee cooling in his grip. The forest stretched before him like a sleeping beast, calm but restless. He thought again of the hollow tree, its impossible cold, the whisper, the way it had seemed to appear out of nowhere. He'd been in these woods for 20 years. Nothing surprised him anymore. Until today. Inside, the cabin was sparse. A single bed, a wood stove, and a shelf filled with old notebooks. One of them bore Clara's handwriting, his late wife. Her notes on forest ecology had once fascinated Jack, though he barely understood them. He pulled it down, flipping through pages worn soft from time and oil. Phrases leapt out: unmapped groves, magnetic anomalies, trees with internal decay unexplained by biology. He closed the book. Coincidence. The mind plays tricks when you're tired, he told himself. But sleep didn't come easily that night. He dreamed of the hollow tree, of stepping into the void, of voices calling his name from beneath the roots. He woke before dawn, sweat clinging to his neck despite the chill. Through the window, the forest loomed darker than it should have, shadows thick between the trunks. He dressed in silence, slung the axe over his shoulder, and stepped into the stillness. The day began like any other, orders posted, trees marked, crews dispatched, but Jack's eyes kept drifting east toward where the hollow tree stood. It pulled at him, quietly insistent, like a name on the tip of the tongue. He told himself it was curiosity, or maybe he just needed closure. At midday he walked away from the others, deeper into the trees, boots crunching over undergrowth. The woods felt different, soundless, watching. He reached the tree again. It hadn't moved, hadn't changed, but something about it was less dormant now. The air felt heavier. Inside the hollow, darkness yawned like an open mouth. Jack bent closer. There, again, his name, whispered, not spoken. Drawn out in a voice that didn't belong in this world, he stepped back, heart thudding against his ribs. The forest behind him remained quiet, but not still. Something had noticed him, and it wasn't done. Jack Harlan woke before dawn, as always. The sun hadn't touched the treetops yet, but his boots were already laced, his thermos full. He moved with the quiet ease of a man who had spent more time in the woods than in his own home. Routine was comfort. Routine was survival. His days were all the same. Early rise, double-check the crew list, assign zones, swing the axe until muscle memory took over. He liked it that way. Predictability left no space for grief, and grief had taken enough already. The men respected Jack, even if they didn't fully understand him. Benny Rhodes especially hovered between admiration and caution. Jack had taken him under his wing 2 years back, after Benny nearly dropped a pine on his own leg. Since then, Benny had become a constant presence, full of chatter and boundless energy that Jack mostly endured in silence. That morning, as the crew gathered, Benny approached with a canteen in one hand and a smirk on his face. "You ever get the feeling the woods are watching us?" he asked, grinning. Jack raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "I'm serious," Benny pressed. "I heard something last night, not an animal, like whispering, no wind, just voices." Jack looked past him, eyes scanning the forest. "Do you drink last night?" "Only water, I swear." "Then maybe you need sleep." The other loggers chuckled and Benny gave a mock bow, retreating. The work began as usual. Saws buzzed, axes struck, trees groaned and fell in long, creaking sighs. But something in the air felt different. The birds were too quiet. Not gone, just distant, as though they'd shifted further away from the camp overnight. By noon, clouds began to gather, low and heavy. Jack barely noticed. Weather changed fast in Montana, especially this deep into the range. But what he did notice was the lack of wildlife. No squirrels darting across branches, no insects buzzing near his ear. Just the low rumble of distant thunder and the occasional murmur of saws. At the mess tent, the crew shared sandwiches and jokes, trying to shake the unease that none would openly admit. Benny sat across from Jack, chewing slowly. "Something's wrong," he finally said. Jack sipped his coffee, not replying. "I went by that weird tree again. The one you looked at yesterday. It's not normal. The trunk's split all the way through, but there's no sign of rot, no bugs. No decay, just empty." Jack's eyes met his. "Don't go near it again." "Why? You saw it too. You felt it, didn't you?" "I said, stay away." The finality in Jack's voice shut the conversation down. That night, Jack sat by the small fire behind his cabin, poking at the embers with a stick. The forest line stood like a silent wall, dense and unreadable. He thought again of Clara. She would have known what to make of this. She always saw patterns, even in things that seemed meaningless. He fetched her notebook again, thumbing through old pages filled with her careful script, notes on tree aging, root networks, fungal communication. Then a page with a sketch, an enormous twisted pine with a hollow center. She had labeled it boundary marker, unconfirmed legend. Jack stared at the drawing. The resemblance was uncanny. A breeze stirred the fire, sending sparks upward. He closed the notebook and leaned back, letting the silence of the forest press against him. A silence too complete, too perfect. In the bunkhouse, the men murmured about strange dreams. One claimed he'd seen red eyes watching from the woods. Another swore the trees were creaking in patterns as if speaking. Jack didn't dream that night. He lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, listening. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. And yet, something had shifted. Out there, past the tree line, past the campfires and work zones, the woods were holding their breath. Jack felt it in his bones. The sense that something long buried had stirred, not fully awake, not yet, but close. Very close. By the third day, Jack could no longer ignore the pull. He'd tried to drown himself in work, assign himself the noisiest, busiest part of the zone, hoping the distraction would numb the awareness growing in his chest. But even surrounded by the roar of chainsaws and falling timber, his mind drifted east, always east, toward the hollow tree. The others noticed his distraction, though none dared comment. Only Benny lingered longer near him than usual, glancing over now and then, waiting for something he didn't yet have the courage to ask. At the end of the shift, with the sun leaning toward the ridge and the camp starting to wind down, Jack veered off. No words, no explanation. Just picked up his axe and disappeared between the trunks. He walked with purpose, boots sinking softly into pine needles, every sound sharpened by silence. The deeper he went, the stranger it felt. The trees grew closer, their bark darker, twisted in a way he hadn't seen before. The air smelled wrong. Not rotten, not decayed, but sterile, lifeless. Then he saw it again. The hollow tree stood exactly where it had before, yet it looked altered. The vertical split in the trunk had widened, its edges curling slightly like lips parting in a wordless sigh. Jack stepped closer, each footfall more reluctant than the last. He reached out with a tentative hand and touched the bark. Ice. Not cool. Freezing. He yanked his hand back on reflex, cradling his fingers as if burned. The split seemed to pulse gently, like a slow heartbeat. Jack leaned in, close enough to smell the sapless void inside. No rot, no damp wood. Just air. Cold, still air, and a scent like dust from a forgotten room. Then he heard it again. His name. Soft, drawn out, familiar. He froze. It wasn't just sound, it carried weight. Memory. There was something in that whisper that hit a place no one else could reach. Not since Clara. He staggered back, heart hammering, breath catching in his throat. He turned to leave, but his foot struck something hard, half buried in the roots. Jack knelt, brushing away the dirt. A rusted piece of metal. No, not metal. Stone. Carved with markings, circles, lines, unfamiliar script that looked ancient and deliberate. He touched it. A jolt shot through his arm like static, numbing his fingers. The forest around him tilted slightly, as if the ground had inhaled. Jack stood quickly, backing away from the tree, axe raised. But nothing moved. No wind, no sound, no threat. Just presence. He returned to camp well after dark. Benny was waiting outside his cabin, chewing nervously on a strip of jerky. "You went back, didn't you?" Benny asked. Jack said nothing, just brushed past him and opened the door. Benny hesitated, then followed. "There's something wrong in those woods, man. I feel it. The others do too. Jeff saw his own shadow move on its own. Garrett said he heard kids laughing in the trees, but no one's been near the trails." Jack dropped the axe against the wall and sat heavily at the table. "I found something," he said finally. "A stone. Carved." Benny's eyes widened. "What kind of carvings?" "Old. Not like anything I've seen before. When I touched it, something shifted." He paused, then pulled Clara's journal from the shelf again. Flipping through quickly, he stopped at a page where she'd scribbled frantically about forest anomalies. "There are trees older than any record," she had written. "Trees that guard, not grow. If you find one, do not break it. Do not listen." Jack looked up. She knew. Benny leaned in closer. "What do we do?" Jack didn't answer. Outside, the forest creaked, just once, but it sounded nothing like a tree. The journal felt heavier in Jack's hands than it should have. He turned the brittle pages carefully, the scent of old paper mingling with pine and smoke. Clara's handwriting, always precise, always patient, crawled across each sheet in soft graphite lines, but now it carried a weight beyond memory. He hadn't read this far before, hadn't needed to. Her research had always been more passion than practicality to him. Myths about forest ecosystems, tales from forgotten tribes, ancient root networks she swore communicated underground. He had nodded, listened but rarely believed, until now. One page tucked near the back bore a title underlined twice, Guardians of the Hollow. Beneath it, Clara had written, "Some trees are older than any known species. Locals call them sleeping gates, said to house spirits or things older than spirits. They are not dead, only dormant. Stories suggest they are seals, not structures. Warnings, not myths." A chill crawled down Jack's spine. He read on. One tale speaks of a heart tree, a massive pine with a hollow center, always cold, always silent, believed to anchor a rift beneath it. These trees are surrounded by anomalies, warped growth, vanishing animals, distorted sound. Entry into the hollow is forbidden. Breaking it open would invite release. The words didn't feel like folklore anymore. He flipped another page, a hand-drawn map. No landmarks he recognized, just a grove marked with red ink and a single note scribbled beneath. If found, record, do not disturb. Jack sat back, the journal trembling slightly in his grip. Clara had known, or at least suspected. She'd been tracing something long before her death. The idea of her walking these same woods, discovering the same signs, was both comforting and terrifying. Across from him, Benny sat hunched forward, chewing at his thumbnail. "Your wife wrote all that?" Jack nodded slowly. "And she found one of these trees?" "She was close," Jack muttered. "She knew what to look for, I didn't." Benny shifted. "So, what's inside it?" "The tree, I mean." "I don't know," Jack said, "but whatever it isn't meant to be free." The fire crackled low. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, brushing against the cabin walls like a whisper too soft to understand. Later that evening, Jack returned to the tree line alone again. He didn't approach the hollow this time, just stood at a distance, observing. He noticed patterns he hadn't before. The surrounding trees leaned slightly inward, as if pulled by the one in the center. The ground sloped unnaturally, roots bulging in directions that defied gravity. The air around it was too still. He remembered Clara's voice, soft in memory. "Nature doesn't warp without cause, doesn't. If you see it bending, something's pushing." He returned to camp and didn't speak for the rest of the night. The following morning, the crew gathered earlier than usual. Whispers moved among them. Someone had heard growling outside the bunkhouse. Another claimed a felled tree had vanished entirely. "Cut it yesterday," Jeff muttered. "Came back this morning, nothing but a stump, no logs. No drag marks, just gone." Jack's silence only deepened their worry. He handed out assignments, sending them far from the east sector. Benny lingered behind. "You think it's spreading?" he asked quietly. "I think it's awake," Jack said. Benny looked pale but nodded. "Then what do we do?" Jack didn't respond right away. He opened Clara's journal again, thumbing through to a page marked with a piece of red ribbon. The sketch showed a circle drawn around the base of a tree, with runes etched along the outer line. "It's not just a tree," Jack murmured. "It's a lock." Benny swallowed hard. And what if the key's already turning? By the fifth morning, the forest had changed. It wasn't dramatic, not at first glance. But to those who knew the land, who listened instead of just looking, the shift was unmistakable. Birds no longer nested in the upper canopy. Deer trails went cold. Even the insects had gone silent. Jack moved through the trees like a ghost, noting every absence, every sign of withdrawal. The woods weren't dying, they were hiding. Back at camp, tension buzzed beneath the surface. Conversations grew shorter, meals quicker, laughter rare. The men didn't say what they felt, but it was there in the way they stayed close to the fire after dark, how no one volunteered for night shifts anymore. That day, Benny didn't report to his assigned zone. Jack found him not far from the hollow tree, standing completely still. "What the hell are you doing?" Jack barked. Benny turned slowly, his eyes glassy. "I just wanted to see it again," he muttered. "It's like it's calling." Jack grabbed his shoulder, shaking him hard. "Don't go near it." Benny blinked, coming back to himself. Yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened." They returned to camp without speaking, but something had settled in Jack's chest, an unease he couldn't shake. Benny had always been curious, reckless even, but this wasn't that. This was something deeper, like a tether slowly tightening. That night, Jack dreamed of Clara for the first time in months. She stood among the trees, barefoot, her hands resting on the hollow trunk. Her voice reached him faintly, as though carried through layers of fog. "You opened the door," she said. He tried to speak, to deny it, but no words came. She turned her head slightly, sadness in her eyes. "You should have left it sleeping." He woke with a start, breath ragged, shirt damp with sweat. Moonlight pooled through the window, casting long shadows across the floor. The wind howled, low and steady, but Jack's gut twisted at the sound. It wasn't wind. It was breath. The next morning, the crew found a raccoon sprawled just outside the tool shed. Its body twisted unnaturally, every limb bent backwards, jaw stretched open far too wide. No blood, no signs of attack. Just wrong. "Jesus," Garrett muttered, backing away. "No way, that's a bear," someone whispered. Jack studied it silently, then ordered it burned. The men obeyed without question. Later, Benny pulled Jack aside. "There's more than one tree." Jack froze. "What?" "I was out marking a trail yesterday. Found another, smaller but same feel. Hollow, cold." Jack swore under his breath. "I didn't go near it," Benny added quickly. "Just recognized it. Thought you should know." Jack nodded slowly. The implications spread in his mind like cracks in ice. If there were more, then this wasn't an isolated incident. It was a system, a pattern. He returned to Clara's journal that night, combing through the margins for anything he might have missed. One phrase caught his eye, nearly invisible in the corner of a page. "They don't grow, they root, they spread underground." He slammed the book shut. That evening, the air grew heavy with pressure, like the moments before a lightning storm. Clouds rolled in too fast, blotting out the sunset. The wind picked up, not fierce, but deliberate, measured, and then came the sound. A deep, rhythmic pulse, barely audible, like something vast shifting beneath the earth. The loggers stood outside their cabins, staring into the woods. The trees weren't moving, but they looked wrong, as if they were breathing. Benny stepped beside Jack. "What do we do now?" Jack didn't answer. His eyes were fixed eastward, where the hollow tree stood unseen in the dark. A thin tendril of mist slithered between the trunks, pale and slow. He clenched his jaw. "It's not just waking up," he said. "It's learning." Sheriff Lena Trask arrived just after sunrise, her truck kicking up dust as it rolled into camp. She stepped out slow and deliberate, sunglasses hiding tired eyes, hand resting casually near the grip of her sidearm. She didn't like being called out to the logging camp, especially not for weird sounds and strange feelings, but the voice on the radio hadn't been Benny or one of the young guys. It was Jack. He stood waiting near the supply shed, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Jack," Lena said, tipping her hat. "Been a while." "Wish it was longer," he replied. She raised an eyebrow. "You said something's wrong with the forest. Want to be a bit more specific?" Jack nodded toward the tree line. "You'll want to see it yourself." Lena followed him into the woods, boots crunching on dead pine. The forest felt off, too still, too damp, the air strangely thick. After 10 minutes, they reached the clearing. The hollow tree loomed at its center like a monument left behind by a forgotten war. Lena stepped closer, crouched near the roots. "Never seen a split like that." "It's cold," Jack said. "Feel it." She touched the bark and yanked her hand back. "What the hell?" Jack didn't reply. He just watched her face as realization began to flicker. "You think this is natural?" she asked. "I think natural left days ago." Lena straightened, adjusting her belt. "Let me guess, you've got stories." "Old legends, spooky stuff, maybe a notebook full of warnings." Jack handed her Clara's journal, already open to the relevant pages. Lena read for several long minutes. Her face didn't change, but when she looked up, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Concern, maybe, or fear. "You think there's something inside?" she asked quietly. "I think there was," Jack said. "And I think it's not entirely in there anymore." They walked back to camp in silence. Lena spent the rest of the morning talking with the crew. She asked questions about sounds, lights, disappearances. The answers she got were scattered, half-coherent, full of trembling details and nervous glances. That evening, she called Jack aside. "You need to shut this operation down," she said. "Too late. You've got men hallucinating, talking about shadows, twisted animals. This is bigger than a few creepy trees." Jack stared at the horizon. "You think it's a toxin?" Lena hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe something in the soil. Some weird mold. Hallucinogenic spores." Jack shook his head. "It's not in the air, it's in the ground, it's in the wood. It's old, Lena." "Older than anything we've seen." Lena studied him for a moment. She'd known Jack for years, trusted his instincts more than most, but now he looked haunted. "Then what do you suggest?" "We contain it." Lena scoffed. "Contain a forest?" "Start with the tree." Jack went to bed early that night, but sleep evaded him. He tossed and turned, mind replaying every whisper, every unnatural stillness. When sleep finally came, it came heavy and deep, and with it, a dream. The forest was aflame, orange light spilling between trees like liquid fire. Smoke choked the sky, but the hollow tree remained untouched, pulsing like a heart. Clara stood at its base, arms outstretched, her voice drowned by the roar. Jack tried to run to her, but the forest shifted under his feet. Roots grabbed at his ankles. The fire didn't burn him, but it pulled at his breath, stole the air from his lungs. Clara turned once, her eyes hollow. Then everything went black. He woke, gasping, throat dry, heart racing. Outside, the air smelled of smoke, but no fires burned. Only the trees standing still, their shadows far too long for the moonlight. The storm hit just after noon. No warning, no build-up. 1 minute the sky was pale blue, the next it was choked with boiling clouds the color of bruises. The wind howled down from the ridgeline in sudden bursts, snapping branches and lifting tarps. The crew scrambled, shouting over the roar, trying to secure anything that wasn't nailed down. But Jack didn't move. He stood near the center of camp, staring eastward. He knew exactly where the wind was coming from, knew what had changed. Lena joined him, eyes narrowed. "That tree, it's not just reacting," Jack said. "It's causing this." She opened her mouth to argue, but the words died. A sound rolled through the forest, low, resonant, like thunder, but slower. It made the ground vibrate beneath their boots. "Let's go," Jack muttered. They ran, pushing through the thrashing trees toward the clearing. Rain began to fall in sheets, blinding and icy. The wind screamed louder, bending the trunks like saplings. They had to shout to hear one another, even from a few feet away. Then they reached the grove. The hollow tree was still there, but it had changed. It stood straighter now, taller. The split in its trunk opened wider like a wound that refused to close. A black mist seeped from its core, coiling into the air like smoke, but moving with intention. It rose, then vanished into the canopy. Jack stared in stunned silence. "It's out." Lena stepped back. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Jack said, "we're not alone in here anymore." They retreated, soaked and shaken, returning to find the camp in disarray. Tents ripped, tools scattered. A tall pine had fallen across the mess area, smashed 2 benches and part of the cook station. But no one was hurt. Not yet. That night, the rain finally stopped, leaving the camp soggy and hushed. The crew gathered near the fire, what was left of it, murmuring questions no one could answer. Benny sat close to Jack, his face pale, eyes darting to the woods again and again. "You saw it, didn't you?" he whispered. Jack didn't respond. "It's real. The thing. The mist." Jack finally looked at him. "It's not just mist." Benny swallowed hard. "Then what is it?" Jack looked toward the forest. The trees no longer felt like trees. They felt like watchers, witnesses. "It's hunger," he said softly. "Waiting." That night, Jack dreamt again. But it wasn't a dream. He stood in the grove, the hollow tree looming above. Clara's voice whispered not from within but from all around. Gentle, coaxing, urgent. "Jack, you need to listen." He turned, trying to find her, but saw only mist rolling across the forest floor. Shapes moved inside it, tall, human-shaped, but wrong, boneless, shifting, watching. One shape separated from the rest, stepping forward. Jack froze. It wore his face. He woke, gasping again, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles ached. His cabin felt colder than it should. The air was wrong. Outside, the mist had returned. Thin tendrils curled through the trees like veins across the earth. It didn't move with the wind. It moved with purpose. He stepped outside slowly, gripping his axe. In the distance, a shape moved between the trunks, just for a second, then gone. Too large for any animal, too silent for a person. The forest had stopped pretending. Back at the edge of camp, Lena met him. "We need to warn the town," she said. Jack didn't look away from the dark. "No," he said. "It's too late for that." She stared at him. "Then what do we do?" Jack turned, his face set. "We make sure it doesn't leave the woods." The forest no longer whispered, it listened. By morning, even the boldest men avoided the woods. Their laughter was gone, replaced by hushed conversations and darting glances. The camp had become a prison of its own making, surrounded by trees that loomed too close, their branches like fingers curling inward. Jack noticed it first. The radios had gone dead. Not broken, just silent. No static, no crackle. As if the air itself refused to carry sound. The landline at the mess tent gave nothing but a flat, unbroken tone. Lena checked the satellite tracker, then tossed it onto the table with a muttered curse. "We're cut off," Jack nodded. "Whatever it is, it doesn't want us calling out." The bridge down the trail, the only road connecting the logging site to town, had collapsed. Not from erosion, not from weight. The supports were sheared clean, like something massive had passed through, or something had stopped pretending to be part of the forest. That night, Benny took the first watch. He sat near the edge of the clearing, shotgun across his lap, thermos by his side. At midnight, Jack went to relieve him. He found only the thermos, no signs of struggle, no blood. No footprints leaving the spot, just the stillness of trees and the heavy scent of damp bark. The others gathered with drawn faces, flashlights trembling in their hands. "We search now," Jack said. Lena hesitated. "It's not safe." "He's still alive," Jack insisted. "He wouldn't go far." They moved in pairs, sweeping the woods in tight patterns, marking trunks with chalk to avoid getting turned around. Every few minutes, someone would call Benny's name, but the sound fell flat, as if the forest swallowed it whole. 30 minutes in, Garrett ran back to camp, white-faced and shaking. "I saw him," he stammered. "I swear I saw him. Just standing there." Jack grabbed his shoulders. "Where?" "Northridge, but he looked off, like he was smiling, but his eyes weren't moving." They rushed to the ridge. No Benny, only footprints, bare feet, leading nowhere. Back at camp, the men argued in panicked bursts. Some wanted to leave on foot, try the long trail east. Others spoke of barricading themselves inside the cabins. Jack listened, arms crossed, staring into the fire. Then someone screamed. They rushed outside to find Jeff kneeling, gasping, pointing at the woods. "It moved," he whispered. "The tree. It moved." No one laughed. Later, Jack sat alone by the fire, flipping through Clara's journal again. Her words had become prophecy, warnings carved into paper, unread until too late. Entities trapped within hollow trees are not creatures. They are wills, conscious, ancient. They do not walk. They influence, possess, twist. They reshape the world to match the shape of their prison. The crew stayed up through the night, too afraid to sleep. Every rustle made them flinch. Every gust of wind brought the scent of moss and old decay. At dawn, Jack walked the perimeter. The forest had grown closer, not literally, but perceptibly. The trees leaned inward, their trunks more clustered, shadows denser. The space between safety and darkness was shrinking. Inside his cabin, he found Benny's pack, still full, untouched. But there was something tucked inside, a small folded slip of paper. Jack opened it, hands trembling. One word, scribbled in Benny's shaky handwriting. "Listen." No explanation, no context. But Jack understood. Benny hadn't run. He hadn't been taken in the traditional sense. He'd heard something, and followed. Jack stepped outside, heart pounding. He scanned the tree line, looking for movement, for signs, for hope. The forest offered none, only silence. Heavy, expectant. Something was coming, and it wasn't finished yet. Jack started hearing it in the mornings. Not a voice, not exactly. It was like a memory of sound. Familiar, rhythmic, layered with meaning he couldn't quite grasp. It came from the trees, from the earth, from inside him. And always, it came with a wordless message: "Come closer." He ignored it at first, pushed it down. Drowned it with work, with silence, with the routine he used to survive Clara's death. But this was not grief. This was something else entirely. At the edge of the clearing, Lena noticed it too. "You've been off," she said. "Worse than usual." Jack gave her a sideways look. "You hearing things?" She didn't answer right away. "Not words," she said finally, "but like I'm being told something. Like the forest's trying to make sense of me, and I don't like how close it's getting." That day, 2 more crew members claimed they saw Benny. One said he was walking through the woods, barefoot, head tilted, humming a lullaby. The other said Benny stood just beyond the firelight at night, whispering to the trees, smiling. By now, no one questioned it. They locked the cabins at night. Posted 2 men per shift on watch. Jack kept Clara's journal close like scripture, flipping it open whenever the dread grew too large to contain. Then came the deer. It stumbled into camp just after dusk, limping, eyes wide, chest heaving. At first, they thought it had been injured by a predator, but as it collapsed in the clearing, they saw the truth. Its legs were bent in unnatural directions, as though rearranged by someone who didn't understand anatomy. Its antlers grew from its ribs, its jaw split too far back. No blood, just torn muscle and misaligned bone. Garrett threw up. Someone else ran. Jack approached it slowly. The deer was still alive. Its eyes met his, wet, frantic, human. Then it spoke. Not in words, not aloud, but Jack heard it. A single thought pressed into his skull like ice. "You opened the gate." He backed away, breath trembling. The deer spasmed once, then died. They burned the body that night in silence. Lena came to him after the flames had gone out. "This is not natural. It's not mold or gas or trauma." "I know," Jack said. "It's aware." Jack nodded, and growing bolder. She took a deep breath. "You said Clara's journal talked about a gate, a seal. If it's open, is there a way to close it?" He hesitated, then opened the journal again. A sketch showed a ring of stones, symbols etched in the soil, and something in the center, a figure reaching upward, screaming. "There might be," Jack said, "but it won't be easy." The next morning they found the trees had changed again. Some had moved. Not fallen, not bent by wind. Moved. 4 pines that had lined the south trail now stood at the north perimeter. Their bark was unmistakable. One still bore a chainsaw scar from last week. The men stared in quiet terror. No one suggested it was a mistake. Nothing in the forest stayed where it belonged anymore, and Jack's dreams grew worse. He now walked in a version of the woods that pulsed like a living thing. The path shifted beneath his feet. Trees whispered his name in Clara's voice. Benny appeared beside him, blank-eyed, mouth stitched shut. At the center stood the hollow tree, taller than ever, its opening wide as a cave. Something breathed within, something huge, something waiting. He always woke before reaching it. But each night he got closer, and now, even awake, Jack sometimes heard the breathing, not with his ears, with his bones. By the time the fog returned, the men no longer asked questions. They just followed orders, stayed near the fire, kept their backs to the woods. It wasn't courage holding them together anymore. It was fear, dense and unspoken, shared like breath. Jack moved differently now. Not afraid, not brave, focused. He carried Clara's journal like a compass and a weapon, his thoughts buried in the circles she'd drawn, the runes she'd copied from somewhere older than memory. Lena stayed close. She'd stopped questioning what they were facing. Now she wanted solutions. "You said there's a ritual," she said. "What do we need?" Jack closed the journal slowly. The circle, stone, soil, fire, symbols carved in blood, fresh. Her jaw tightened. And the center? Jack's voice was flat. Something the forest touched, something it's trying to claim. Lena didn't ask if he meant Benny. They spent the day preparing. The camp had grown deathly quiet. Even the trees seemed to lean in as if curious. The air felt wrong, not heavy, not thin, but hollow. Like standing inside a great breath waiting to exhale. Jack marked the earth carefully, replicating the pattern from Clara's page. Stones were set, symbols etched deep into the dirt with the edge of his axe. The others watched, but didn't interfere. Garrett prayed. One of the newer men wept softly and didn't stop. At dusk, Lena returned with what Jack had asked for, a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside it, a single deer antler, blackened and cracked, taken from the twisted carcass 2 nights ago. "Will this work?" she asked. Jack looked at the antler, then at the hollow tree beyond the rise. "We'll find out." Night fell hard. The fog returned with it, thicker than ever, slinking through the trees in tendrils. The fire pit roared high, casting orange light across the stones. Then they heard it, a sound like footsteps, but too many and too uneven. Not a person, not an animal. Shapes emerged at the tree line. 10, maybe more. Silent. Still. Each had a vaguely human shape, but their proportions were wrong. Limbs too long, spines bowed, heads tilted too far. Faces hidden in shadow, features shifting like smoke under skin. And at the center of them, Benny stepped forward. He looked the same, but he wasn't. His eyes were too wide, his skin too pale. He smiled, and the expression didn't reach his eyes. "Jack," he said calmly, "you don't have to fight this." Jack stepped between the circle and the clearing, axe in hand. "I know you're not him." Benny blinked slowly. "We are him, and more." Lena lit the ritual fire. The circle flared to life, the runes glowing dull red. The figures flinched. Benny didn't. He stepped closer. "She's waiting for you, Jack, in the tree. She still loves you. She wants you to understand." Jack's hands trembled, but he didn't drop the axe. "She's gone." "She's changed," Benny replied, voice low. "Like all things must." Then, as if commanded, the creatures charged. But when they crossed the line of the circle, the fire erupted. A wall of flame burst around them, cutting off the clearing from the woods. The figures screamed, not in pain but in fury, and recoiled, clawing at the air. Benny stood still, watching, his smile fading. "You'll have to go in," he said. Jack nodded once. He stepped into the center of the circle, the black antler in one hand, the journal in the other. The flames parted before him. And the path to the hollow tree opened like a wound in the night. He walked forward, alone. The forest exhaled. The path to the tree was no longer part of the forest. It felt carved from the world, detached from time. Each step Jack took felt heavier, slower, as if the ground resisted him. Or gravity bent differently here. The air was thick with pressure and silence, the kind that drowned thought and memory. He gripped the antler in one hand, Clara's journal in the other. Ahead, the hollow tree rose like a monument. Its trunk glistened with moisture that wasn't rain, and its split had widened into an archway. Black, wet, breathing. Mist swirled just beyond, too thick to see into, too dense to ignore. Jack hesitated at the threshold. Then Benny appeared. He didn't walk. He emerged, from the fog, from the tree, from nowhere. He looked clearer now, as if the forest had finished sculpting him. His smile returned, cold, wrong. "You made it," Benny said. Jack didn't respond. "She's inside," Benny continued. "She misses you." "You're not Benny." The figure tilted its head. "Does it matter?" "I remember what he did, what he feared, what he hoped you'd forgive." Jack stepped forward. "Where is he?" The smile faded. "He's still here," it whispered, "somewhere deep." The mist churned, and suddenly Benny's face changed, just for a moment. His eyes filled with panic. His lips trembled. A whisper slipped through. "Jack, help me." Then he convulsed. His body jerked backward, limbs twitching as something took hold again. When he stood, the creature had returned. "Too slow," it hissed. "Too late." Jack raised the antler. The creature flinched. "You remember this," Jack said. It stepped back. The runes in the journal glowed faintly. Jack flipped to the marked page, words etched in Clara's hand, the ritual's final line, the closing seal. His voice was steady, low, deliberate as he began to speak it aloud. The creature screamed, not in fear, in resistance. The ground shook. The tree's interior pulsed violently, black mist spewing out like smoke from a furnace. Benny dropped to his knees, clawing at his own face, blood streaking down his cheeks. Jack rushed forward. He gripped Benny's shoulders. "Fight it." I'm sorry," Benny gasped. "I listened. I just wanted to understand. It sounded like her. It wasn't her." Benny's body spasmed again, then went limp. Jack caught him, lowering him gently to the forest floor. The journal lay open beside them, pages fluttering in unseen wind. Benny opened his eyes once more. "Finish it," he whispered. "Before it finds another way." Then he stopped breathing. Jack stood, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the tree. The mist had thinned, but something stirred inside now. A shape, massive, fluid. It hadn't emerged, but it was moving, preparing. He stepped to the base of the tree and pressed the black antler into the soft soil beneath its roots. It slid in without resistance, as if the earth welcomed it. Then he read the final line. The wind exploded outward. A scream ripped through the woods, not from the creature, not from Jack, but from the forest itself. Trees bent away. Light burst upward from the base of the tree like fire turned inside out. Jack fell to one knee, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, the hollow had sealed shut. No split, no breath. Just bark. Smooth. Silent. The mist vanished instantly, sucked back into the roots, and all around him the forest was still, for the first time in days, truly still. He looked down at Benny's body. Whatever had held him was gone, but so was he. Jack picked up the journal. The runes no longer glowed. The tree stood before him, and behind only silence. Jack returned to the camp just before dawn. He was alone. The others saw it in his face before he spoke. They didn't ask about Benny. They didn't ask what had happened in the woods. They just moved aside, watching him with a quiet reverence born of fear and respect. Lena approached. Her eyes scanned him carefully, looking for wounds or madness or both. "Well?" she asked. Jack didn't answer right away. He sat beside the dying fire, pulled Clara's journal from his coat and stared at the final page. "It's not over," he said. Lena crouched beside him. "The tree's sealed." "It's one of many." She went still. Jack nodded. That one was the oldest, the deepest. But it wasn't the only one. Clara suspected that from the beginning. It's a network, roots, myths, echoes. We close the gate here. But the forest stretches beyond anything we've mapped. Lena rubbed her face. So this wasn't a win, just a delay. It was a warning. That afternoon, the remaining crew began packing what little they could. There was no talk of returning. The idea of staying another night here was unthinkable. No one needed convincing, but Jack wasn't leaving. He watched them load the trucks, watched Lena give orders, efficient and focused, keeping everyone calm. When she finally approached him, he was already at the edge of the tree line. "You're staying," she said, not questioning. "There are more," Jack replied. "I need to find them before they wake." Lena crossed her arms. "You don't owe this place anything." "I owe her," he said quietly. Lena paused. "You mean Clara?" Jack nodded once. "She spent her life listening to the forest. I spent mine cutting it down. Now I understand what she heard, what she tried to protect. If I leave, it happens again somewhere else, and no one will be ready." She looked at him for a long time, then pulled a small notebook from her jacket. "My father was a geologist. He used to talk about anomalies in soil patterns, places where trees grew against the grain. I started recording them after we met. Thought it was superstition. Maybe it's not." She handed it to him. Jack took it with a nod. Lena held out her hand. He shook it firmly. "If I don't hear from you in a week," she said, "I'm coming back with fire." Jack managed a faint smile. "Fair enough." That night the camp emptied. The last truck rolled down the broken trail, its taillights flickering into the fog. Jack stayed behind. He rebuilt the fire, rechecked the journal, studied the drawings. Clara left. The runes, the circles, the places she'd marked in red. Each one could be another tree, another gate. He lit a lantern and walked back to the grove. The tree stood quiet now, its bark smooth and closed, the mist long gone. No wind stirred the leaves, no birds sang. He placed his hand against the trunk. "Thank you," he whispered. For what? He wasn't sure. For staying closed, maybe. For giving him a purpose. For giving Clara's warnings a voice. Then he turned and walked into the woods. His boots crushed leaves that hadn't fallen in years. His breath fogged in air that wasn't cold, and the forest watched, not with menace, not yet, but with ancient memory. He moved deeper, past the known paths, into territory untouched by maps. Searching, listening. He wouldn't stop until he found the next gate, because something had stirred. And if it ever woke again, he'd be waiting. The forest didn't resist him at first. Jack moved with steady steps, guided only by memory and the fragile intuition Clara had once called the listening sense. He had no compass, no signal, no map, just the journal, and a growing certainty that something ahead was broken. By the second day, the land changed. Trees grew too close, bark warped into unnatural spirals. The air felt denser, sounds traveled oddly. His own breathing echoed back at him wrong. Every night he marked his path with red thread tied to branches, but come morning the thread was gone. Still, he pressed on. He found the second tree on the third night. It didn't hide. It stood on a shallow rise surrounded by flat stones that looked carved, not shaped by nature. The trunk was hollow like before. The bark shimmered faintly under moonlight. The opening breathed, in, out. He stepped forward and saw someone sitting at its base. It was Benny, or what was left of him. His body looked whole, but frozen. Head bowed, hands limp, skin pale and stretched too tight. Jack stopped a few feet away. "Benny?" The figure didn't move. Then it lifted its head. His eyes opened, but they were hollow, not empty. Reflective, like mirrors holding back something vast. Jack reached for the antler talisman hanging around his neck. "Jack," Benny said softly, "it's louder here." Jack didn't lower his hand. "You're not him." "No," the voice admitted, "but I remember him. I remember you." He stepped forward. Jack backed away. "Do you want to see her again?" the thing asked. Jack's fingers tightened around the talisman. "I see her every time I close my eyes." "She's waiting." "No," Jack said. "You're wearing her face." Benny's body shuddered. The skin rippled, as if something underneath was shifting, realigning. Then his expression changed. It was Clara. Jack staggered back, her eyes, her voice. "Jack," she said gently. "You found it." "You're so close now." He swallowed hard. "That's not you." "It could be." His hand hovered over the journal. The page was marked, runes to draw, words to speak. "I loved you," Jack whispered. "I still do," the voice answered, soft as breath. "That's why I called you." The air trembled. The forest around them bent inward. Jack dropped to his knees, tracing the runes into the dirt with trembling fingers. His voice cracked as he began the chant. The Clara thing screamed, not in fear, in rage. The forest convulsed. The tree behind it split wider, a new wound tearing open. From within came a shape, black, shifting, enormous. No eyes, no limbs, just mass and intention. The chant faltered. Jack's voice strained. The shape moved closer. Benny's corpse collapsed. The ground shook. Fire erupted around the circle he had drawn. The shape halted, screeching, recoiling. Jack clutched the journal with both hands, shouting the final phrase. The forest roared. Wind burst outward. The shape disintegrated into shadow. The fire died instantly. And Clara stood before him again, not twisted, not hollow, just her. Tears streaked his face. She stepped closer. "Jack," she whispered. He reached for her, then stopped, because her feet weren't touching the ground. Jack didn't move. Clara hovered just above the forest floor, her hair stirring in a wind that didn't touch the trees. Her eyes were gentle, full of a sorrow that seemed endless, but her shadow didn't match her shape. "I'm not afraid of you," Jack said. Her voice, soft as breath, replied, "I know, that's why you made it this far." He clutched Clara's journal tighter. The fire circle still glowed faintly, but the runes were fading. "Is it you?" he asked. She tilted her head. "A piece of me remains. What the forest couldn't devour, I held on. For you." He felt his knees weaken. "Why?" "Because you loved me," she said. "And I remembered." Her form flickered, just once, and Jack saw what lay beneath, a shape twisted by time, bound to the roots, too broken to be whole. But then the image steadied again, the illusion returning. "It wants to be free," she said, "and it used me. It used Benny. It will keep using others until it opens every gate." Jack knelt, breath ragged. "I don't know how to stop it." "You do," Clara said. "The forest showed you. My notes showed you." He opened the journal. The last page, now blank, had begun to fill again, lines drawing themselves in real time, as if written by an unseen hand. A final circle, symbols of sealing, the words etched in red. Clara pointed toward the tree. "It must be sealed from within." Jack's heart dropped. "I won't survive that." "No," she said softly, "but you'll stop it." He stood slowly, eyes fixed on her. "Will you be there?" "I'll be with you," she said, fading slightly. In the silence, Jack nodded. He stepped toward the tree. The arch gaped like a mouth waiting to swallow him. Inside there was only blackness. As he crossed the threshold, he felt the world narrow. His thoughts dimmed. His breath grew shallow. Inside, time folded, space compressed. The world didn't spin, it trembled. The roots reached toward him, slow and writhing, as if tasting his presence. The walls of the hollow pulsed, veins of bark glowing faintly with every step. He reached the heart of the tree, a void in which no sound lived. He dropped the journal on the ground. He drew the final circle with trembling hands, using ash, using blood. He spoke the words. The tree shuddered. A scream exploded from its core, not a voice, but all voices. Clara's, Benny's, his own, echoing endlessly. The walls began to collapse inward. Jack fell to his knees. One final phrase remained. He looked up and saw Clara standing in the hollow, hands outstretched. She mouthed the words. He repeated them. The tree exploded in light, white, blinding, pure. Then, silence. The forest was quiet again, not the tense, listening silence of before, but something softer, natural, as if the woods themselves had exhaled after holding their breath for far too long. When Lena returned with a search team days later, they found only ashes where the second hollow tree had stood. No fire had burned. No heat lingered, but the earth was scorched clean in a perfect circle. At the center lay Clara's journal, untouched by flame. No sign of Jack, no footprints, no body. Just the journal, its final page blank, waiting. They buried it beneath a young pine, newly grown at the forest's edge. The bark was pale, the leaves green, the trunk firm and whole. A new beginning. Weeks passed. The fog never returned. The forest, though changed, remained calm. No more whispers, no twisted animals. The men who survived the camp refused to return, but none forgot what they saw, what they felt. Garrett stopped logging entirely. Lena transferred to a post in another county, but visited often, always walking the perimeter of that grove, always pausing by the new pine. And once, one early morning, as the wind stirred and the sunlight cut through the leaves just right, she heard a voice, faint, calm. "Keep listening." She smiled through tears and whispered, "I always will." Far from that place, deeper than any trail could lead, the forest grew thicker, denser, untouched by man. And there, hidden between roots and shadow, a circle of stone sat undisturbed, waiting. Not pulsing, not breathing, but aware. Because something ancient had been sealed, and while Jack Harlan never came back, his work continued. Not in fire, not in fear, but in vigilance. He had listened, and he had chosen the forest. If this story gripped you like the forest gripped Jack, don't forget to subscribe for more tales that go deeper than bark and blood. And if you want to know what happens when a town vanishes overnight, click the next video now. There's always another gate.